Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here tonight. I recognize many faces, but for those of you I don't know, my name is Damon Cates. I'm the Senior Associate Vice President of Alumni Relations and Development, and also have the honor of serving as the Campaign Director, and I'm a 2005 Booth graduate as well. I saw many Booth alumni here too. I wanted to welcome you this evening and to update you on a few things that are happening on campus. We're often called, or we often refer to ourselves as uncommon, and as it relates to our campaign, I would say the same is true, and that's the case for two distinct reasons. The first, in the size and aspiration of our campaign. We launched a $4.5 billion capital campaign 2 years ago, and when we did, it was the fifth largest launched in higher education history. And as of last week, we crossed the $3 billion mark, so we're well on our way to $4.5 billion. Also, though, another distinguishing factor about our campaign that makes us unique is that at the exact same time that we launched a $4.5 billion campaign goal, we also launched an engagement goal seeking 125,000 of our alumni's participation in the campaign during the public phase. So we wanted any of our alumni, as many as possible, to go to something, to give to something, and or help with something during the 5-year public phase. Also, as of this week, we have crossed the 73,000 person mark on our way to hopefully 75,000 plus by the end of this fiscal year in June. So thank you. By being here tonight, you're helping add to the engagement goal. If you have made a financial commitment this year, thank you. If you haven't, not too late to do so. And if you have and want to make another one, that's totally fine too. As I like to say that as campaign director. But also, by being here tonight, as I mentioned, you're helping with the engagement goal. And also, as we think about all of our academic programs in many ways for friends and family and colleagues to engage with the institution academically, whether it's attending the lab school, whether it's taking an executive education course at Booth, whether it's recommending someone to the college or someone for an MBA or PhD program, please recommend as many people as you think would be a good fit, because we'd love to welcome even more people into the U Chicago community. And also on the career side, if you have an internship opportunity available at your company, even if it's a lead that you know somewhere else where you don't work, please do let us know, because we're trying to find as many co-curricular experiences for our students as we can. So thank you for being here this evening. It's my pleasure again to welcome you, and I'm very much looking forward to tonight's presentation. Thank you again.
The University of Chicago is urban,
global, courageous,
unusual,
phenomenal,
rigorous,
fabulous,
outspoken,
economics and pizza,
pushing borders,
invigorating,
an intellectual crucible
that pushes you to be your best every day.
From its inception, the University of Chicago focused on rigorous, intense inquiry. It's defined everything about what the University of Chicago is today and what it will be in the future.
The core curriculum is the symbol of who we are. Our mission is to get very talented students and to put them through a program of systematic, interdisciplinary training, and 4 years later graduate Chicago intellectuals.
I'll bring up a discovery that we've made, then I'll proceed to criticize my own discovery. It's through self-criticism you create a learning culture of critical inquiry.
We aren't just talking at each other, we're listening. And at the end of the class, I might have a completely different perspective on the issue.
Some excellent students over the years. They were very much my teachers. It changed my work. It just exposed me to a world of ideas.
I was the beneficiary of a scholarship from the University of Chicago. I could not have gone to business school without that scholarship.
I just feel so grateful that I was selected to kind of be among the minds and the intelligence and the incredible people. It's been the best experience of my life.
I think supporting young people to pursue their dreams opens up the world to you. All we ask of anybody is that they do the same to the next generation.
The university is really made by the people in it.
really very competitive.
Very unruly.
Seeing all the crazy, amazing things that they're doing.
Curing diabetes, cancer.
Innovation, more entrepreneurship, new ventures, new technologies.
Really forces me to push for something beyond what I'm doing.
In higher education today, the humanities are really in retreat. We really think that it's a responsibility to continue to foster growth of the humanities. The Collegium will allow teams of humanists from all over the world to tackle problems that society needs to deal with.
The Institute of Molecular Engineering is organized around solving water, energy, health problems through designing matter from molecules up. Just solving one of all of these problems that we're working on would be tremendous.
You're part of an intellectual community
that attracts individuals who are intellectually fearless.
That will bring together experts from different disciplines to help solve problems.
We're exploring opportunities to create more portals for the community and people in the city to come into the university and both get some of the knowledge that we have, but also share their knowledge with us.
Lots of people are skeptical about the ability to use social programs to prevent crime. What we've tried to do is to generate evidence that is so rigorous and so compelling that the most skeptical skeptic will have to acknowledge that there's really something here. 1 year of participation in the Youth Guidance and Becoming a Man program reduced violent crime arrests to these kids by over 40%, which I think really challenges the conventional wisdom that the only way that you can control crime and violence in the United States is through locking up millions and millions of people.
And if you show the impact, it has global reach. Billions of people, not just millions, billions of people that you can get to.
It's very important in a world which is becoming more integrated that you have these global universities.
We now have a rather more ambitious global strategy with the same gold standard quality of curriculum and teaching.
Students are going to want an experience of understanding other cultures because this is going to be the world that they are functioning in over the coming decades.
Can we bring people, scholars, politicians, administrators from these different areas also together to discuss what's going on?
To debate the big challenges facing the world.
Human illness limits society, and accordingly, fixing that, addressing it, is hugely important. It's transformative.
I had been diagnosed with metastatic or advanced breast cancer. The first thing Dr. Fumi Olopati said to me is, I want to find out more about your tumor so that I can personalize the treatment for both you and the tumor. The survival rate for metastatic diseases was 1 to 2 years. I really must say that I have survived the odds. I mean, I'm still sitting here, standing here 10 years plus.
You know what? It's worth every day getting up and supporting patients like her.
We have an enormous obligation to the people who gave us the opportunity today to do what we do with these young people, and in turn, they have an obligation to support those who come after us.
The question for us today is, how do we realize these values in a powerful way going forward?
Together, we are spreading grace and humanity.
Together we are
thinking about ways in which you could have an impact on society.
Together,
we have the potential to change the way people think about urban problems.
Together,
we make amazing discoveries possible.
It's part of our DNA. It's who we are.
It's a big, big universe here.
Ours is the university of great discoveries.
Ours is the university of fearless inquiry.
Ours is the university that develops ideas that change the world.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Thompson, and I'm a 2003 graduate of the law school. I'm so glad that all of you are able to join us here tonight for an opportunity to dive into some University of Chicago scholarship and for a chance to relax and catch up with one another. On October 20th of 2014, Laquan McDonald was shot and killed during an encounter with the Chicago police. And in November of 2015, over a year later, a video of his shooting was released to the public. Well before its release, well before Laquan McDonald was being discussed in the New York Times, in international media, well before there were arrests and there were criminal charges and this case began impacting elections, Craig Futterman was talking about Laquan McDonald and talking about his case. And he was asking for a public examination of how his case fits into a larger pattern of broken policing in Chicago. And even though there was a strong effort to sweep this case under the rug, for it to be forgotten, Professor Futterman did not let this case go. He understood immediately that it pointed to a serious problem in our city and that it needed attention and investigation and academic inquiry. And although Craig has been more of a fixture on our television sets and in our newspapers in the time since Laquan McDonald's death, his work didn't start with that case, and obviously it's not going to end with that case. Because for the 15 years before Laquan McDonald was killed, Professor Futterman has been doing the same with other cases that we know about and cases that we don't know about that involve police misconduct. And he's been asking questions that other people aren't asking. He's been focusing academic inquiry on the problems of modern policing, and he's been litigating police misconduct cases with law students to drive policy reform and to reveal more systemic problems. And he's been training generations of lawyers, including me, on how to litigate these cases and on how to take seriously our responsibilities as lawyers to provide pro bono assistance and to, where we can, contribute to the public good. And in that way, I think Professor Futterman's scholarship represents what's really the best about the UChicago ideal. He teaches his clinic students about academic research and about how that research and investigation and data-driven inquiry can pinpoint problems in policing. And I know that that's the topic that we're all looking forward to hearing about tonight in the context of youth and the Chicago Police Department. But more than just that, his focus and his teaching is directed at public service, at applying a spirit of investigation and thoughtfulness to trying to solve, or at least identify, problems that plague Chicago, and particularly communities of color in Chicago and elsewhere in the United States. And the impact litigation that he has directed at the Civil Rights and Police Accountability Project at the law school has been critical in highlighting many of the problems that his data reveals and his investigation reveals, and in getting real relief for real people who have been victims of police misconduct in our city. He treats the law and academic research as a service profession. In the video that we just saw, talking about solving problems, that's what Professor Futterman is doing. He's a lawyer who teaches his law students to serve their clients first and foremost, and his broader academic work, as we're going to hear about, has really extended beyond that. His clinic's work and his personal work in gathering data and interpreting and sharing that data has been instrumental in the recent movement that we've seen to conduct a more serious examination of policing in our city. Now, I know that Professor Futterman is going to say that his work has just been one small part of that movement, and that young activists of color, community organizers, and others have really driven the move for reform. But it has been, Craig Futterman's data and research and conversation about these topics has been critical, because his scholarship, the cases that he's worked on have proven that the misconduct that we hear about is not just anecdotal, that data, that academic research supports the existence of a real problem and is a way for us to look for solutions. His work is a great example of the kind of civic engagement that we just heard about. He continues to be a model to his students and to all of us as alumni of the university that we can use our world-class education to benefit the public good. And his work, like the work of other professors at the University of Chicago, make the University of Chicago a continuing important institution in this city and in the United States in helping to drive change. So I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Craig Futterman. Before joining the law school, he was the director of public interest programs and a lecturer at Stanford Law School. He served as an attorney in the juvenile division of the Cook County Public Defender's Office and at the law firm of Futterman and Howard, where he specialized in civil rights lawsuits, focusing on police brutality and racial discrimination. So please join me in giving Craig a warm welcome.
Damn, Tara. Good evening. Good evening. How about that? Thank you. Now that Tara has me thoroughly blushing, believe everything she said about the university, but not the stuff she said about me. It really is an honor to be here to give this spring's Harper Lecture. I consider it a sincere, real privilege to teach and to do civil rights work in our special university community here. Every morning, my wife will tell you this too, I get up and I pinch myself, grateful for the opportunity to do what we do, to do the work that's closest to my heart. Teaching and hopefully on a good day inspiring some of, our terrific students. to make a difference in the world, or trying to inspire folks to make a difference, while at the same time serving people in need, serving real people with real problems. I'm also grateful to the university for providing this platform, a platform for this conversation about one of our nation's still most vexing problems, not just our original sin, but our present-day reality of racism. And specifically, I'll be talking a lot about race, police, and youth. And thankfully, this won't simply be an opportunity for us to talk about these issues, but one that tries to identify things that we can do, what we can do about them. So in that vein, my students and I, for about the last 4 years or so, we've been talking, and more important than talking, we've been listening. I see one of Michelle here. She's been one who's been doing this with us for many years. Recently graduated, and we've been listening to Black high school students about their experiences with the police. It's part of what we call the Youth Police Project. It's now led by another former student, Chaselyn Hunt, terrific lawyer, former clinic student. And our project, it rests on a simple premise, and the premise is simply just that young people who are most affected by urban police practices possess critical knowledge and perspectives that are all too often absent in our conversations about these issues. And simply put, that kids closest to the ground know stuff that many of us just don't know. After numerous workshops that we first did when we started this project, South Side Chicago, West Side Chicago, we immersed ourselves for the last 2.5 years in Hyde Park Academy, which is a school, high school, South Side Chicago in the Woodlawn neighborhood, just blocks from the law school where we teach. Hyde Park Academy made national news just a few years ago when President Obama visited there, shortly after 15-year-old Hadia Pendleton was killed just blocks within the president's home. While we've heard from kids stories of terrible abuse, that's not what we focus on. What we focus on is the everyday encounters, the countless interactions that occur between teens and police on a daily basis in this city and honestly across the country. And our methodology is just truly simple. We ask Black high school students to tell us about their interactions with the police, and we listen. Here's a slice, before I go further, here's a slice of what kids told us. You could cue.
Jamari Triggs, senior.
Hasanti Vernon.
Erica Johnson.
Montreux.
Richard Porter.
James Adams.
Christopher Moore.
Anaya Collins.
I mean, I just be walking with my friends or something. Or, I could be walking by myself and then, they'll pull up, get on the car, or get on the wall, spread your legs, put your hands up, put your hands on the gate, don't move, searching my pockets,
How often does that happen?
Pretty much every time I go outside.
Last year around this time, it would be a lot of random stops, just random stops after random stop.
Yeah, that's an everyday thing. They ride around there all the time.
They just stop and hope and guess that you was doing something. Basically, that's the way I feel. They just be like, people on the street, run your pockets, let me see what you got up in your pocket.
I mean, like, if that's what they're looking for, that's a bad tactic. Because that's just going to make us feel more bitter about them and not want to cooperate.
It just make you feel down, like you ain't nobody. And they make you feel like that because they think they the police and they got all the power.
They're over you and you're under them.
Therefore, you don't matter. Their word will prevail over yours. It made me feel small because, like, I was stopped for no reason. I was just minding my business.
Say more about that. I mean, what's it?
Oh, it made me feel like a less than a, you know, I'm almost a man, but it made me feel less than a man, you know, them stopping me and, you know, somebody going into my pockets, you know.
It's like restricting. You can't do stuff that regular people would because it's like you being harassed.
Yeah, they make you feel less of a person, like I said.
They have all the power and they can do what they want and they can get away with it. Right, it felt like I was a nobody, you know.
I mean, every situation is upsetting with the police, you know, and ain't never no good encounters that you have with the police.
At first, I was like, the police are good and stuff like that, and then now I'm sort of like, they're capable of anything. I don't know what could happen if I were to be stopped again.
You know, it's basically like you got good cops and bad cops out here, you know. And I think it's a small number of good cops. Yeah. It's a big number of bad cops. That's how I look at it.
So if I was ever to get into something, I wouldn't call, the police would be the last person I call. I call family before police.
Well, given my past experience, I wouldn't call the police.
I wouldn't call for nothing.
Wouldn't call for anything.
Man, my son get older, and I hope that they change, I guess, the training that the police have, because by the time he get older, I'm guessing or I'm hoping that the police be done change. Some of their attitudes or the training that they receive needs to change.
Let me try to highlight 4 lessons we learned from the kids before we talk about some of the implications. First thing that jumped out at us was that there was a different constitution that governed kids in black neighborhoods than the constitution that we teach our students in our classrooms at the university. In contrast to most of my students at the U of C, high school kids see police as a ubiquitous presence in their neighborhoods. Each of them live with the ever-present possibility of being stopped and searched by police, encounters in which kids feel that police have all of the power. High schoolers describe as routine to us hostile encounters in which officers command kids to put their hands up against the wall, spread their legs to be searched. Everything about these encounters, from the officer's swagger or their gait as they approach to their tone of voice, appears from the kids' perspectives to be calculated to convey messages of authority, to inspire fear. As Richard said, they're over you, you're under them, therefore you don't matter. Young black folks expect to be treated with suspicion, to be treated with the suspicion of being a criminal by police. That's just simply how most of the kids we spoke with, and what you saw wasn't cherry picking. What you saw represented hundreds of interviews that we did with black high school students on Chicago's South Side. That's how most kids think that the police see them. They can't imagine anything different. It's almost like the weather. They were like to me and my students, like, how dumb can you be? That's the way it is. That's their normal. In contrast, we interviewed over 100 students at the lab school. My daughter, both my daughters, but now one daughter graduated. My youngest daughter still goes to lab. As you all know, it's an elite, predominantly white school, affiliated with the university, outstanding school, but it's situated just 5 blocks from the high school where you heard each of those children speak. In a room full of 100 students, all high school, same age as the kids that you spoke with, not a single kid, well, wait, other than my daughter, but she deserved it. She reported ever having been stopped by police. Lesson 2, primacy of accountability. Unifying theme articulated by, really in one form or another, by virtually every student with whom we spoke was that the police have all the power. They have all the power. And that knowledge of unchecked power informs every single encounter between kids and the police. Every young black man and woman stopped by the police knows that that quote-unquote routine stop has the potential to escalate into something far worse. A false arrest, years in prison, even death. Virtually every young black man and woman on the south side of Chicago has a friend or a family member who's been beat, arrested, tased, or even shot at the hands of police in Chicago. That's also a part of our kids' everyday reality. This unchecked power not only informs every encounter, but it also eclipses all the positive stuff they experience. Courteous or even friendly encounters didn't change kids' basic perceptions. Kids shared lots of encouraging stories with us. Michelle can tell you some about good officers who greeted them, showed an interest in their well-being, officers who treat kids with dignity, treat them with respect, officers who treat people fairly. But at the same time Officer Friendly smiles and greets a student, kids see officers not so friendly, across the street harassing or shaking down other kids on their block. And the kids see those same officers come back again, and again. Nothing happens to them. And when kids see those officers abuse their friends and neighbors without any fear of punishment, that says a lot more to them about the department, what the department is, than the neighborhood officer who greets them with a smile. And indeed, it actually makes that smile feel like a lie. Kids told us, and this was their words, they called them the real police, the real police. Those aren't the officers who try to be nice to them or talk to them, smile at them. The real police, they tell us, are the ones who are protected from discipline. It didn't matter, and this is what the data show, and their experience is consistent with this, that 90%, despite what Chris said, most of the officers I see are bad, despite the fact that 90% or more of the officers in their neighborhoods aren't doing dirt, are not doing this mess, if everyone protects the abuse of officers, they become the face of the department, and indeed the face of civic authority to our kids, not Officer Friendly. What did Hasante, that's the young man with the dreads, say? Every situation's upsetting. No such thing as good encounters with the police. Third, our kids' experiences with stop and frisk further undermine the possibility of building trust. While the stops that kids experience are anything but courteous, even the most courteous stops in the world wouldn't change the unmistakable message that kids get when they're stopped by the police, and that's the message that we think you look like a criminal. It's just that simple. Because that's the honest, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, with one another, that's the intended message, because we're not even allowed to stop you unless we have a reasonable belief that you committed a crime. And we can't search you unless we have reason to believe that you're armed and dangerous. So no matter how respectful we are when we stop and search a child, we're telling that child that we think that he or she looks like a dangerous criminal. And our work taught me how deeply kids are affected by that, by these stops, and not just the stops, but how normal they are in their lives. The damage to their self-esteem, their view of the place in the world. As Jamari told us, they make you feel like less than a person, less than a human being. How the ever-present possibility of being stopped also causes kids at a critical stage in their development to curtail their own freedom. Their avoidance strategies: don't go outside, don't walk alone, don't walk in groups. All for fear of being stopped. how it cramps their horizons. One young man described to us how he felt like prey as police cruised by, so much that he tries to make himself invisible. If we follow the underlying logic of these strategies, the ultimate disguise would somehow to not be seen as black. That's how we avoid being stopped and harassed. In addition, many kids view this practice as fundamentally unfair, especially when it's in play in certain neighborhoods and with certain populations and not others, that it's a practice that's reserved for black, brown, and poor people in the neighborhoods that we live. Think about that. It's difficult to forge trusting relations in that kind of context. Final observation I'll share before we talk about the implications of this is the one that struck me at least the most. More than anything, I was struck just by how alienated, and you can hear it and see it in each of the children. It breaks my heart, breaks my students' hearts, and I'm sure it breaks your own. How alienated the kids felt from law enforcement, their fundamental distrust of police. Recall Anaya, if I was ever to get into anything, the police would be the last people I would call. Our young people don't feel safe to step up as witnesses, reluctant to even talk with police, much less provide information about criminal activity. Many told us they wouldn't even call the police when someone close to them was hurt, a victim of a violent crime. There would be these pregnant pauses because it was like a leading question in court when we'd ask, and they know that we wanted to say, yes, of course we call the police. But there'd be this pause and no. Kids told us that they would usually go to others and not often the people we'd want them to go to protect them. And when we studied citywide data, we observed the same thing. We observed that the neighborhoods in Chicago that had the very most complaints of police abuse were the same areas that had the lowest clearance rates for violent crime. Just like the kids taught us, police were least successful solving crime, solving violent crime in the areas where they had the least trust. So what can we do about this? How do we address these fundamental issues that have caused so many of our children, all of our children, to distrust police? Here's what the kids taught us. If we want to hope to build any kind of positive relationship, much less trust between young black folks and the police, our conversation has to begin with honesty, and it's got to end with accountability and basic respect. First, honesty. Most important thing we can do, very most important thing we can do is just simply be honest with our kids. We can't earn our kids' trust without being honest with them. It's the same thing that we teach, that I teach my own children about who their relationships with, who are their friends. You don't trust people who lie to you. Honesty demands that police departments share information when a police officer shoots somebody or is accused of brutality. Be honest with people, let them know what's going on. Keep people informed, don't lie, don't cover up. If there's a video, release it within 24 to 48 hours. That's what the effective departments do in this nation. Acknowledge our children's realities. Acknowledging the realities of young black people means things like passing a law that not just encourages but requires every single police department to collect and report standardized information about these everyday encounters that we're talking about between individuals and the police. Police shootings, citizens' complaints, street traffic stops. Honesty means that we share the truth about who it is in America who's being searched, who's subjected to force, and who's killed by police. It is beyond shameful. We don't even keep reliable data in the United States when police kill people. We got to speak some truth before we can get to reconciliation. And the reality is that we stop, search, and arrest and kill far more people in the United States than law enforcement in any other nation in the world. England and Wales combined experienced 55 fatal police shootings in the last 24 years. Here in the US, we had 59 fatal shootings in the first 24 days of last year. 24 years versus 24 days. The reality is also that we stop, arrest, and kill black folks at far greater rates than we kill whites. There's a recent report that was published in ProPublica. It was drawing on the admittedly unreliable FBI data that do exist, and it found that black men were 21 times more likely to be shot by police than their white counterparts. Washington Post and The Guardian also found, looking at the data that they could unearth, also significantly that black men significantly more likely to be shot and killed by police than whites. Chicago, since 1986. Chicago police officers have shot in Chicago since 1986 an average of more than one person a week, 30 years. Chicago police officers have shot on average more than one person a week for 30 years straight. More than 75%, and wait, I should say, if we count the misses, because we're not that great shots. Chicago police shoot on average over that time period, shoot at 150 people a year. More than 75% of the people who have been shot in Chicago are African American. In my lifetime, that means we've seen hundreds of black folks shot by police in Chicago. But until the state's attorney just brought criminal charges against Officer Jason Van Dyke, who Tara talked about, for the murder of Laquan McDonald, the high school student shot 16 times, caught on video, viewed around the world, there hadn't been a single instance in my 50 years on this earth in which an on-duty Chicago police officer had ever been criminally prosecuted for shooting a black man, woman, or child. So honesty means acknowledging our own racism, having honest conversations about why that's so. Why are police stopping and searching a lot more black and brown folk than white folk? Why are police killing significantly more black than white folks? Everything else simply feels like a lie if we keep denying that folks' experiences are real. Most of you in this room probably hadn't heard of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald before last Thanksgiving, when the release of the video of his killing sparked national attention, mass protest here and around the country. While few took notice, Laquan was actually killed back in October of 2014. And back when he was killed, there was a short blotter that appeared in the press, drawn from the police narrative, read like hundreds of others. Read, squad car responds to a call, someone trying to break into car's industrial area. Officers found a boy with a knife in the street. He ignores their commands to drop the knife, lunged at an officer with the knife, putting the officer in imminent fear of his life. Officer shot him one time, self-defense. Stories like these appear several times a month in the Chicago media. Like I said, on average, one shooting a week, 30 years. So common that they rarely, if ever, command our attention. Basic elements the same. Black man shot by police. Police at the scene say the shooting was justified. City says it's investigating. Then silence. Internal investigations proceed quietly, usually take a couple of years, without any follow-up by the press. And the results are always the same. Everyone in this room now knows what really happened. But before that officer, before Van Dyke drove up on the scene, what's interesting, or one of the things that's interesting to me, was that the officers on the scene were doing the right thing. They're doing what you'd hope well-trained officers would do in this situation. We got a 17-year-old kid, small knife. He slashed the tires of a police car. He looks like he's somewhat out of it, like he's in a daze or something. He's not responding to police commands to drop the knife. No doubt, the officers have the right to arrest him, or better yet, at least to try to get this kid who looks out of it some help, some medical attention. But one thing that the officers recognized was that he didn't pose an immediate threat to anyone at this point. He's walking in a mostly abandoned industrial area after 9:30 at night. No pedestrians on the street. There's a construction fence on the side of the road, fencing things off where they still plan to build a shopping center. Workers have long since went home. So what do the officers do? They follow him, slowly, on foot and in a car, going just a couple miles an hour. They're close enough so that they can act should he pose a threat to anyone's safety, but they're also far enough away so that they're not in danger. Time and distance on their side, that's good stuff. That's what police are supposed to be trained to do. And they also call for someone, they call for help. They actually call for a taser to try to expand their options to bring him in safely. More good stuff. This goes on for a number of minutes. Then Officer Van Dyke and his partner, he burst on the scene. Decide to be cowboys, forget this mess. Pull their cars right close to Laquan, pull their car right close to Laquan. Van Dyke jumps out with his gun drawn. And as Laquan tries to shy away toward that construction fence, Van Dyke shoots him, dropping him to the ground. Here's something you don't know from watching that video, because curiously, the video has no sound. Van Dyke pauses after he shoots Laquan that first time. He pauses. He then fires a barrage of bullets, emptying his chamber into the boy's bleeding body as the boy lay on the street. A woman in disbelief repeatedly screams, "Stop shooting! Stop shooting!" as Van Dyke pumps at least 16 rounds into the boy's body. I mean, this is where we gotta call a duck a duck. As people who witnessed the shooting have told me, this was an execution. Van Dyke shot the boy like he was nothing but a dog in the street. And while there are, as I've said, lots of police shootings in Chicago, this really is extraordinary. This thing doesn't happen every day, what happened here. Something like that doesn't happen every week. But while what Van Dyke did was beyond morally wrong and reprehensible and criminal, and truly extraordinary, the police department's attempts immediately after to circle the wagons and cover up what happened, that sadly is anything but extraordinary. And what stands out most, even to the most casual observer, was just how normal it is. Even after, as I just said, every officer on the scene had done everything right, suddenly the life of a 17-year-old black child mattered less than covering for a fellow officer. Code of silence takes place, goes into effect immediately after the shooting. Entire world's now seeing the department's machinery of denial and action. Officers intimidate and they shoo away witnesses who had seen what had happened. Not give me your name, give me your contact information, tell me what you saw. It was get the hell out of here. One of the witnesses refused to leave. That was a woman who repeatedly screamed, "Stop shooting." So they take her back to the station. She says a couple detectives lock her in a room, hold her there against her will for 6 hours, intimidate her and tell her that she didn't see what she saw, that she didn't see the officer repeatedly shoot the boy as he lay on the ground. Contrary to the actual witness reports, if you read the official police reports, they falsely state that each and every witness on the scene didn't see a thing, contrary to what they told the grand jury. There's a Burger King across the street, kitty corner for where all this happened. And Burger King's 13 security cameras, they capture the events leading up to the shooting. They don't actually capture the shooting, but they're 13 separate videos, 13 separate angles. Within minutes of the shooting, a group of police officers, Chicago police officers, barge into the BK, and they demand the password to access the surveillance video, the footage at Burger King. Manager of the restaurant, he reports that the officers wipe 86 minutes of video from the store's hard drive, the crucial minutes immediately before and immediately after the shooting. They erase not one, but all 13 files from BK's system. That's what the manager says. But here's something. In a moment of real poetic justice, surveillance cameras are running all the time. So guess what the surveillance cameras catch while the officers are erasing the video? That video still exists. Official narrative, single shot, self-defense, shared with media, shared with the press. Every police officer on the scene lies. They either say Van Dyke shot Laquan in self-defense as Laquan lunged at him with a knife, or they say they saw nothing. Indeed, there was an officer who was sitting in the front seat of the police car, the same police car with the camera that caught the video, caught the execution, the shooting, right in front of him. She claims that she was looking down the entire time Van Dyke fired 16 shots in Laquan's body. I was looking down the entire time, I didn't see anything. Prosecutor reports that this fusillade of shots lasted 14 seconds or more. And she's looking down, didn't see anything. Notwithstanding the knowledge of the definitive video evidence, the definitive evidence from the police dashboard camera, and notwithstanding the 16 gunshot wounds that riddled Laquan's body, every single police supervisor and commander signed off on the official narrative of a single shot self-defense, a shot in self-defense, and reported that the shooting was completely justified. Signed, sealed, delivered. The reports are there for everybody to see, the official reports of the department. Despite our public calls that Tara talked about, and even our Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, just seeking the truth, the department, the city clung to this false narrative, hid the truth from the public for another 13 months until a court ruled that the department lacked any lawful justification whatsoever for suppressing the video and ordered the department, the city, to release the video to the public. The entire world is now seeing that the official narrative was a lie. So let me ask you this. How's denial and secrecy been working for the department? How's it been working for the police? Laquan could have been a classmate of any one of the children you just heard. Is there any wonder why they don't trust? Imagine, if you would, how young people might see police differently if the department had been honest with them from the very beginning about this. Then, after being honest, the next thing that they taught us is we need to hold police officers accountable when they abuse people, when they abuse their power to hurt people. Our children need to see that we don't protect the abusive police, but instead we stand behind the real police, the thousands of good officers who serve us with honor. And that means implementing credible systems that investigate and punish misconduct, credible systems that address patterns of police abuse, credible systems that address the code of silence. Community oversight, absolute necessity for us to have a trusted and accountable force. There needs to be some community and community policing for it to have credibility. To our kids, seeing is believing. In a collaboration that we have with Sheila Betty, a law professor at Northwestern, my students and I drafted an ordinance that would actually create a credible system for investigating police misconduct in Chicago. And that ordinance was actually just introduced yesterday in City Council. Thank you. And it would actually create an independent citizen police monitor that would be endowed with the resources, with the power to conduct rigorous, unbiased, high-quality investigations that are fully transparent, fully accountable to the people most impacted by police abuse, fully transparent to everybody. You may have heard about it in the news. Tribune wrote a powerful editorial in support of this in last Sunday's paper and actually reiterated support in the editorial pages today. Make sure this ordinance becomes law. Credible systems to address patterns. As a matter of policy, and this isn't just Chicago, most departments around the nation refuse to look at evidence of patterns of complaints of police abuse when they're investigating police misconduct. That's just indefensible, has to stop. It shouldn't have taken 20 complaints, nearly 20 complaints, against Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke. Most of them for brutality, almost all against black victims, a complaint of a racial slur, 3 shootings. This wasn't his first shooting, 3rd shooting. A $500,000 police brutality verdict. That's a court judgment that he violated another black man's civil rights. A $5 million police settlement and a court order to release the video of his execution of a 17-year-old black kid for Van Dyke finally to be held accountable. If we'd bothered to look at complaint patterns in Chicago, a 17-year-old kid might still be alive. Right now, and I'm a fan of unions, but the police unions in Chicago are fighting to destroy police misconduct records that are more than 5 years old. If they have their way, they'll be what my dear friend Jamie Calvin calls a great bonfire of records. I mean, we can't investigate ongoing patterns of police abuse if the records don't exist. So here's a no-brainer. Something else it's about what we can do. Illinois legislature, and there are 2 bills, actually 3 bills pending right now that would do this simple amendment to the law. Amend the law, quote, records that relate to complaints, investigations, adjudications of police misconduct shall be permanently retained, not destroyed. That's simple. Senator Van Pelt on the West Side introduced a bill in the Senate. Representatives LaShawn Ford, Mary Powers also introduced something similar. There were hearings yesterday in Springfield about this. Some of my students were down in Springfield testifying. Support it. Let your senators and representatives know. Let's not let the very evidence that could save another child's life go up in smoke. Then the code of silence. Can't expect to earn any of our kids' trust if we cover things up, if we lie and protect the officers who abuse the people who our kids love. We simply got to address that code. You know what? Something else that many folks just don't realize was that we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for someone within law enforcement who had the courage to call me and tell me what happened to Laquan McDonald. Told me about that video, walked me through it frame by frame, begged me, please, Craig, please, do something to keep this thing from getting buried. Keep it from going the way the BK video went. Please help to share the truth and just stop this mess. That's what started our investigation. That's what prompted Jamie Calvin and I to write about it, to call on the city to share the truth. That's what led us to uncovering the autopsy, the eyewitnesses. That's what led to our investigation, our students, what happened at Burger King. That's what ultimately led our clinic to bringing a lawsuit, to bringing the lawsuit that ultimately resulted in the public release of the video. On behalf of journalist Brandon Smith, with one of Tara's colleagues at her law firm, at the Lovie firm, Matt Topic. That's what led to the changes. Someone within law enforcement had the courage to come forward. We wouldn't be having this conversation here or around the nation if someone didn't have the courage to come forward. And what about those officers? What about those officers who have the courage to bring that stuff to light? They need our protection. They need our support. And they deserve our admiration. Sad reality for officers. Tara can tell a story, I'm not going to tell it now, that she saw as a student working in Stateway Gardens, is that for officers, the reality for them, speaking out when something goes down, breaking that code of silence means jeopardizing their careers, their families, even their lives. We need to build a culture where the real police, or I should say the opposite, where the officers who have no business wearing the badge fear the good officers, the real police, and not vice versa. Because when our kids and their families, when they see the department's machinery of accountability work the way it's supposed to work, when the real police, when the good police can and do step up, that's when confidence grows. And with that trust comes cooperation. With that trust comes our safety. Far more effective police departments. Finally, and I need a quick swig and I'll stop in a minute. I'm gonna sound annoying here, like the kid that I am, but finally, probably the best thing that we can do to earn the confidence of our children is just quit it. Just quit it. As my friend Paul Butler, excuse me, says, just stop that shit. Stop harassing, arresting, brutalizing, and killing so many black people. Minimize the unnecessary negative encounters between black kids and police and improve the ones that really do have to occur. That means just sounds simple. It's the golden rule. Treat each and every person with basic dignity and respect. And that sounds really simple, but it actually requires a fundamental change in mindset. Most police departments around our country still train our officers in a military model. And it's designed to prepare officers for combat, the thin blue line. What we need to do is stop looking at every black kid like he or she is a potential enemy or a threat. And instead, we need to train our police to see our kids as just that, our children. Let me close with this. As a younger lawyer, I was struck by an observation that was made by Doughboy, character played by Ice Cube in John Singleton's 1991 film Boys in the Hood, when I was just getting out of law school. And Doughboy said, either they don't know or they don't show what's going on in the hood. Meaning either we don't know or we don't care. Something happened after the release of that video of a killing of a 17-year-old black child. Curtain's been lifted. We know. We know. And we also know what we need to do. Young black folks, like the kids you've seen, they've led us to this moment and they've challenged us to care. It's up to us to act on it. I'm glad to take questions.
We have time for just a couple questions before we start the reception.
Hi, my name is Kate Usaf. I graduated in 2015 with a master's degree from UChicago. Thank you so much for being here. I have a question. You spoke a lot about conducting some very compelling interviews with some of the youth on the south side of Chicago, and I'm wondering if in your work understanding the relationship between these particular youth and police, if you conducted any interviews or did any other form of qualitative research, conducting interviews with police themselves, particularly the police of either the individuals shown in your interview or those that patrol or service those areas. If you did, I'm wondering if you could speak to that, and if not, I'm wondering if you could speak to maybe what are the situations that precluded you from doing so.
That's a great question, Kate. Thank you. Short answer is yes, and this is, and really you're outlining our next research project, Kate. And exactly that. It's trying to build qualitatively, precisely these conversations about these everyday encounters from the perspectives of police officers. And one of the things that I do, because I have had a lot of those conversations in a less rigorous and systematic way, but among the things that I do is, and we do, is we train police officers around the nation. And so I've spoken with thousands of officers from law enforcement agencies around the nation in different departments. And here are parallels, or here's a strong parallel between the conversations I've had and we've had with police and those that we've had with kids. And it's depressing, and I find it depressing, but somehow hopeful at the same time. Just like kids tell us, and they do, like we often try to press kids to imagine something different. Can you imagine these interactions, these encounters, your relationship with law enforcement being different than what it is? And kids almost uniformly answer something like this, Mr. Futterman, maybe in your neighborhood, but that's fantasy land here. Back to it's like the weather, that's just the way it is. And also, sadly, when I talk to police officers and their supervisors, same conversations, they tell me the same thing, that they also have a real difficulty imagining these relations and relationships being different, saying it goes back far deeper than just what just began. It's not just something that just started happening. This is an age-old issue. But here's something that also gives me hope in the same conversations. Both kids and police tell me that they'd like things to be different, and they'd like things to be better. There's some research that was done at Stanford, rival school, stuff called the growth mindset. And right now I'm blanking. One of my dear friends has done a lot of work around this, but it's one of her colleagues that does the primary work and some famous work. But it's this basic proposition too when you think about it in problems. When we see problems and experience problems as intractable, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there's lots of research that supports that. And even just being able to imagine something different, I see it also every day in negotiations and legal negotiations, when you can actually begin to imagine something different, a settlement, it really can become a reality. And so you've outlined some of our next project, and we've done it. And this project that was called a Youth Police Project is meant to be just that, where when you think about it as lawyers too, often think about clients. And we intentionally call this the Youth and Police, Youth/Police, not Youth versus Police project, seen really as both kids and police as a part of, when we're talking with our law students as lawyers, both as a part of our client population who do have a common interest in improving these interactions and changing them.
As a parent of somebody who's just 22 years old now, but a couple of years ago, he was between 14 and 17 and 18, a Hyde Parker, with siblings, two and friends, a black kid, multiracial kid, doesn't matter. And have you studied the impact of this negative police interactions with the black and brown kids, the impact of that on the family, the parents, and the siblings? It's like a disease. How particularly, not the trust part alone, but the mental health, the health of the parents too. as it would be a very important thing to study, because we are tired of telling them to behave and obey the police all the time, and it kind of hurts to be seeing the police walking by your house, and the first thing that comes to your house is, are they going to pick up my son again? It has happened so many times to me and other friends I know in Hyde Park. So I think it's a topic worth studying.
Yes, is the short. So we're not psychologists, and one of the things actually that has been gratifying about this work, it's been an opportunity to work with other members of the university community, which have included anthropologists, which have included sociologists as well. And we held a conference last year that explored that very issue with psychologists as well. And part of it, you're right, and when I spoke about the public safety consequences, which are consequences that are under-recognized, also when we are at U of C looking at the cost and benefits of our practices and policies, some of the things that have not fully been taken into account as well in our policies and practices are exactly what you speak. How do these everyday, and we don't even have to get to the horrific sadistic stuff that still does occur, but these everyday interactions shape the way kids see themselves, how they view themselves, how they view their peers, and their place in the world. And there's a sociologist, Carla Shedd, who recently published a book, Unequal City, and I encourage folks to read it. She's at Columbia, originally from Chicago, who did some terrific research that I think documents some of what you're talking about in an academic and rigorous way well. But I don't have to be a psychologist also to, when my students and I interact and talk and listen with these kids every day, to see the pain and to see the impact. It's real, and we need to do something about it. That's the fundamental point, is that, while we know the challenge is ultimately caring, that looking at each of these kids who you've just heard from, who go to school blocks from our campus, as our children, as our own children, the same thing that we'd want for our very own kids, for each of our own kids. I hate the fact that my wife and I have had to have the same kind of talk that I think you referred to with our own teenage kids about their experiences, and I'd rather have a much different talk about how to stay safe. And I'd much rather have a talk, yes, I'd like, and you can feel safe going to a police officer when you're in trouble. That's what I'd like to be able to tell, not just my children, but all of our children.
Good evening. My name is Tasneem Goodman, and I am a graduate of the college and the law school and a member of the Alumni Board of Governors. And tonight, I have the unenviable position of being sandwiched between Craig's thought and action-provoking talk and the reception to follow that will allow you all to continue this conversation with each other. Before we get there, I'd like to share a few words of thanks. First, to Damon for sharing thoughts and progress about our campaign and how it is going. Second, to Tara for that very moving introduction of Craig. Third, to Craig for a talk that is truly emblematic of Chicago. Rigorous thought, groundbreaking litigation, and policy action that really is everything that this university teaches us and inspires us to do. I want to thank Dean Miles, our new Dean of the Law School, for being here tonight. And I want to take just one moment to talk about the campaign, inquiry and impact. You heard Damon talk about the current results of the campaign, and I want to hone in on one point, which is our engagement goal. It's not a small thing that this campaign includes an engagement goal. It's the first time that a major university, that any university, has included within a capital campaign also an engagement goal. Our goal is to engage 125,000 of you throughout the public phase of the campaign. So what that means is that you all can attend more events like this one, like our volunteer caucus this Saturday. It means that you can volunteer, that you can lead events like the reunion, that you can mentor and hire students. And certainly it means that you can contribute to the campaign in a financial way. And what I want to bring your attention to is that this engagement goal is really emblematic of the fact that we are that we know that a central part of what we're doing as part of this campaign is to build community. And we're building a community for the purpose that together we're doing nothing less, that this university, that all of us are doing nothing less than changing lives and changing the very world around us, as demonstrated by the work that we heard about that Craig's doing today. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this campaign, for being a part of our engagement goal, and being present this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you so much.